My childhood friend pretended to be me online to get free brand deals. So I reached out to the same brands with proof and watched her followers vanish overnight. If you'd asked me 5 years ago who I trusted the most, I probably would have said Amanda without even blinking. We met in fourth grade. I had just transferred schools, and she was the first person who talked to me like I wasn't invisible. She slid me a Capri Sun during lunch and said, "You look like you need a win." That became our thing, small wins. That was the beginning of what I thought would be a lifelong friendship. Fast forward to our 20s, and we were still close. Not as inseparable as we were in high school, but close enough that we texted almost daily. I was working part-time as a freelance illustrator and building my Instagram presence. My niche was digital character art, comic-style portraits, a mix of realism and vibrant, almost neon coloring. It was slow at first, but after a few reels hit the algorithm just right, my following started to grow. Brands reached out, not major ones, but enough to keep the lights on. Art supply companies, online platforms, small collabs with indie creators. Amanda, meanwhile, was in and out of jobs. She'd tried 3 different career paths in 2 years and was always broke. I helped when I could, designed a logo for her short-lived candle business, let her crash at my place for a few weeks when her lease ended unexpectedly. I genuinely thought we had each other's backs. Then one night, I got a message from a small but reputable brand I had worked with before, Brush and Beam. They asked if I had an alternate account because they'd received a pitch from someone claiming to be me, offering similar art samples, but under a different handle. I stared at the email for a solid 5 minutes. The account was called at artsy_mandy_illustrates. I knew that name. Amanda had a Finsta under that handle years ago. I clicked the link they sent and nearly dropped my phone. It was my art. My exact art. Old pieces from when I first started, newer commissions I hadn't even posted publicly yet, even the watermarked ones, with the watermark awkwardly cropped or blurred out. But the bio said, self-taught illustrator. All inquiries welcome. DM for commissions. Her pin reel was literally one I had posted 6 weeks ago. Same animation, same music. I felt sick. I sent a calm, professional reply to the brand, explaining that I was the original artist and would never operate under a different alias. Then I messaged Amanda. She left me on read. I waited. Maybe she'd call. Maybe she'd admit she messed up and we'd talk. But hours passed. Then a day. Then 2. And then I noticed she blocked me on Instagram. That's when it got real. It wasn't just one brand. She'd reached out to at least 5 I knew of, some of whom I had worked with. I started compiling everything. Screenshots, timestamps, links, emails. I made a private Google Doc titled, "For When the Time Comes." I didn't want to be petty. I wanted to believe she'd apologize and take the account down. But the longer I waited, the more it felt like I was being erased. Like she was repackaging my years of hustle, struggle, and burnout into her brand because she didn't want to build her own. 2 weeks later, I heard from another mutual friend, Jules. She casually asked if I'd seen Amanda's glow up online. I told her everything. Jules was shocked. She offered to help, and together, we spent a weekend collecting even more evidence, screen recordings, dated comparisons of posts, even Amanda's own comments under my work from months ago, where she'd said, "Proud of you, love, and teach me your ways." I didn't confront Amanda again. I went quiet. While she was busy racking up likes and free art supplies using my stolen identity, I was doing my homework. I reached out to every single brand she'd messaged. I sent them the doc. I didn't ask them to do anything about it. I just stated the facts and attached proof. One by one, they responded. Some were horrified. Others apologized to me personally. One even offered me a long-term collab to make up for the mess. Amanda didn't post for a few days. Then a cryptic story went up on her page. A black screen with white text saying, "Some people can't handle other people's success." Classic gaslighting. But that was the last time she posted. The next day, her account was gone. Not deactivated, deleted. Brands she tagged removed her. Her name vanished from collab lists. She didn't text me. She didn't apologize. But a week later, I saw a new follower request on my private page. The username was unfamiliar, but the profile picture was a low-res selfie I remembered from her Facebook days. Her alt account. I ignored it. Instead, I posted a reel titled, "How to Protect Your Art Online." It went semi-viral. A few of the brands that dropped her reshared it. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. Revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's receipts. Sometimes it's a slow, quiet collapse. And I had front row seats. After her Instagram account vanished, I expected Amanda to reach out. I had no idea what she would say, but some part of me still hoped she'd explain herself. That maybe she was going through something, spiraling, not thinking clearly. I had too many memories of us being real friends, staying up late doing DIY face masks, talking about our futures like they were bright guarantees. I didn't want to believe she was capable of something so malicious. But the silence said it all. 3 days after the whole thing blew up, I bumped into her at Trader Joe's of all places. I had headphones on, hoodie up, minding my business in the frozen aisle. Then I heard my name, my actual name, not the handle she used to impersonate me. I turned, and there she was, dressed like nothing had happened. "I feel like we should talk," she said, not even a hint of remorse in her voice. I stood there for a second, unsure how to react. I took one earbud out and gave her a polite, neutral smile, the kind I'd give a stranger who said something weird in line. "Talk about what?" I asked, genuinely curious if she'd admit anything. She shrugged, leaned casually on her cart. "You didn't have to go scorched earth on me. I was just trying to get my own thing going." I blinked. "By pretending to be me?" "It's not like that," she said quickly, voice rising. "I just used your style. I never said I was you. You used my art, my captions, my hashtags. You cropped my watermark. You messaged brands I had worked with and claimed it was your work." Amanda crossed her arms, like I was being dramatic. "You're acting like I stole your identity. It was just art. I didn't take your social security number." I laughed. Actually laughed. It was bitter, short. "You stole my livelihood, Amanda. You impersonated my work, my reputation. You even tried to get deals off it. That's not just art." She scoffed. "You always take everything so seriously." And that's when it clicked. She really didn't think she did anything wrong. To her, I was just being sensitive again. Just like in high school, when I got upset that she posted my private poems on Tumblr for feedback. Or in college, when she wore one of my designs to a party and said she made it because no one would know. She'd always been this way. I turned back to my cart. "I don't think we have anything else to talk about." She said something as I walked away. I didn't catch it all, but I think it was something like, "People like you don't make it anyway." I didn't stop. I didn't turn. I just kept walking. That night, I sat on my couch and scrolled through my old texts with her. I had so many saved photos of us over the years, sleepovers, beach trips, goofy selfies. I deleted most of them, not out of spite, but because it felt like closing a chapter one had stayed stuck in for too long. After the dust settled, my follower count started rising again. Some people found my story from the "How to Protect Your Art" reel. Others followed the trail from the brand statements and reposts. One small business even wrote a blog post about digital art theft, using my situation as a case study, with my permission, of course. I didn't need Amanda's sabotage to fuel my growth, but the truth is, it became a turning point. It made me reevaluate everything: how I presented my work, how I protected it, how much I gave away to people who didn't respect it. I started adding more detailed watermarks, documenting every piece, backing up files. I trademarked my handle. I created a guide for new artists on safeguarding their content and published it as a free download on my site. Somewhere in that chaos, I realized I was no longer just hustling, I was building. Then came the weirdest part. A brand Amanda had messaged, the one she pitched using my art as inspiration, reached out again. They wanted to do a collab. Not just a reel or a one-off post, but a 6-month campaign promoting a new digital sketch pad. I read the email 3 times, heart pounding. This was the kind of opportunity one used to dream about while doodling on printer paper in my shared apartment. I said yes. The first post I made for the campaign went live a week later. I captioned it, "Authenticity doesn't have shortcuts. Neither does art. Grateful to be here, brush in hand, scars and all." It blew up. People resonated, not just with the piece, but with the journey behind it. I never named Amanda publicly. I didn't need to. The brands knew. Our friends knew. And she knew. A few months later, Jules sent me a screenshot. Amanda had started a new account, this time under her real name. She was trying to pivot to lifestyle content, but the engagement was abysmal. You could tell she was trying, but it was clear. The magic she faked wasn't there when she had to create it herself. Part of me felt bad. I won't lie. It's hard to kill a friendship that long, even if it was rotting from the inside. But mostly, I felt peace. Amanda taught me a brutal but necessary lesson. Not everyone who claps for you wants you to win. Some are just waiting for their chance to steal your spotlight. She took her shot, and I took mine back. There's something about betrayal that changes how you see the past. After Amanda ghosted me and got caught impersonating me online, I couldn't help but reframe every memory. Every time she'd shrugged off my boundaries, every joke that felt like it cut too deep, every compliment that had a weird edge to it. It wasn't just hindsight, it was clarity. What messed me up the most wasn't that she stole my work. It was that she didn't even see it as theft. She saw it as borrowing. Like I owed her something. Like my years of effort were community property just because we had history. For a while, I struggled with whether I was overreacting. It's wild how betrayal can gaslight you even when the facts are crystal clear. But every time I saw another artist post about being copied or stolen from, I remembered how it felt to open that fake account and see my drawings being passed off by someone who used to braid my hair in middle school. I buried myself in work. The collab with the Sketchpad company blew up way more than I expected. They featured me in a newsletter. A podcast reached out to interview me about art integrity in the digital age. My site traffic spiked, commissions doubled, and I even got invited to a small creators expo in Denver to do a panel on creative ownership. It was surreal. 3 months earlier, I'd been debating whether to renew my Adobe license or buy groceries. Now, I was getting flown out and put up in a hotel to talk about ethics. And still, Amanda lingered in the back of my mind. At the expo, something happened that snapped things fully into place. After my panel, a girl about 19 came up to me, clutching a sketchbook like it was her shield. She looked nervous, and when she spoke, her voice shook a little. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said. "I almost quit art because someone stole my stuff online. But your reel made me feel seen." I asked her what happened. She said a guy in her college class had taken her sketches and turned them into AI pieces, then won a student contest with them. When she tried to confront him, he said it wasn't technically hers anymore. "I felt like I was going crazy," she whispered. "Like maybe it was my fault for posting it. God, did I know that feeling?" We talked for a while. I gave her my email and told her to reach out anytime. I even connected her with an attorney friend who specialized in creative rights. She smiled for the first time when I told her, "Your work is yours, and don't let anyone treat it like stock footage." On the flight back home, I cried a little. Quietly, headphones in, hoodie up. Not because I was sad, but because I finally felt like I'd turned something awful into something useful. Amanda's betrayal didn't just become a cautionary tale. It became a tool I could offer to someone else. Back in my apartment, I got back into my routine. My page was growing steadily. I'd started sharing more behind-the-scenes content, time lapses, process breakdowns, tips for new artists. The engagement felt real. Not just likes, but comments with thought, questions, connection. I wasn't just building a following. I was building a community. Then, about 5 months after the whole thing with Amanda blew up, I got an email from a small design publication asking for an interview. At first, I thought it was another feature on digital art ethics. But when I opened the PDF they attached, my stomach twisted. It was Amanda. She had rebranded, again. New handle, new aesthetic, new name. The article was a pitch she'd submitted to the magazine. It was all about learning from your mistakes and building yourself up after being wrongfully canceled. There were no names mentioned, but she painted herself as a victim of internet mob mentality, someone who had been attacked for posting inspiration. She even had the nerve to write, "When people are jealous of your talent, they try to erase your presence." I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was pathetic. I didn't even need to respond. The editor who had reached out already seemed skeptical. I told them, calmly and clearly, that I had documented proof of the plagiarism and brand fraud, and that multiple companies had confirmed it in writing. I sent the folder. They thanked me and said the article wouldn't be running. A few days later, Amanda posted a long-winded story on her alt account, blaming gatekeepers for keeping her from rising. She tagged no one, named no one, but she knew I'd see it. I didn't respond, didn't subtweet, didn't shade her in a reel. That would have been too easy and too close to giving her what she wanted. Attention. Instead, I shared a photo of a piece I'd been working on for months. A moody, complex self-portrait in soft blues and deep orange tones. The caption said, "This is the face of someone who almost gave up, but didn't." That one went viral. Not in a flashy, overnight way, but in a slow, heartfelt kind of way. People shared it with their own captions. Someone printed it and put it up in a local art store in Portland. A mental health organization reached out asking if they could use it for a campaign about creative burnout. And somewhere in that whirlwind, I stopped thinking about Amanda. She became background noise, just one more hurdle I'd jumped over. When you create something with your whole heart, you pour pieces of yourself into it. When someone steals that, they're not just taking content, they're trying to take you. But the thing is, art can be copied. Souls can't. If you told me a year ago that I'd be building a following and consulting brands on creative ethics, I'd have laughed. I was that kid who second-guessed every post, who rewrote captions 10 times and still deleted them later. I'd always been behind the screen, not in front of it. But after the Amanda situation and everything that followed, it was like I had cracked something open in myself. And what spilled out was fire. I didn't become famous. That's not what this is. But I became seen. Really seen. And for someone who'd spent most of her life feeling invisible in her own friend group, that was everything. The DMs I got started to shift. They weren't just about art anymore. They were people opening up about betrayal, about family members who stole their ideas, about best friends who ghosted when things got hard. I tried to reply to everyone, not because I was trying to be some kind of influencer, but because I remembered how alone I felt when Amanda first blocked me. Sometimes just knowing someone believes you is enough to get you through the night. But not all the messages were kind. A few came from Amanda's mutuals. Passive-aggressive little grenades, worded just carefully enough to avoid getting flagged. One said, "Crazy how fast people turn on each other when clout's involved." Another wrote, "Guess being a victim gets you further than being a friend." It stung. I'd be lying if I said it didn't. Even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, even though I had proof, it still hurt to be called a backstabber by people who'd once laughed with me at sleepovers. But that's the thing about telling the truth. It doesn't always make you popular. It just makes you free. One night, maybe 5 months after everything blew up, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me said to pick it up. It was Amanda. I recognized her voice instantly, even through the static, even with the hesitation laced in every syllable. "Hey," she said, like we'd just bumped into each other at Trader Joe's. "Can we talk?" I didn't say anything at first, just sat there, letting silence stretch until she filled it. "I messed up," she said. "I know I did. And I'm not calling to fight. I've lost everything. The brand's dropped me. I'm working 2 part-time jobs just to stay afloat. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know I'm sorry." It wasn't dramatic. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. It was flat, almost numb, like she'd run out of tears a long time ago. I think I expected to feel triumphant in that moment. Like, yes, finally, she gets it. But instead, all I felt was tired. Tired of carrying the whole thing. Tired of being angry. Tired of the version of me that still flinched when someone complimented my art, wondering if they'd seen hers first. "I appreciate the apology," I said finally. "I do. But I think you're more sorry about the consequences than the choices." She didn't argue. Just said, "Yeah, maybe." We hung up not long after. No promises to keep in touch. No declarations of healing. Just quiet. I sat with it for a while. Let it roll around inside me, sharp edges and all. And then, like I'd been waiting for that one last click, I finally let it go. Not forgave her. Not forgot it. But released the weight. I didn't need her validation or her guilt anymore. I had my work, my people, my peace. That was enough. The next few months were honestly the best I'd had in years. I moved into a new studio space. A sunlit loft above a coffee shop that smelled like espresso and fresh bread every morning. I started mentoring younger artists online, hosting weekly live streams where we'd sketch and talk about mental health, copyright, burnout, imposter syndrome. All the stuff no one warned us about when we were learning to draw apples in middle school. A few weeks before the year anniversary of the Amanda situation, I got invited to speak at a Digital Creators Summit in San Diego. It wasn't huge, but it was legit. Panels, press passes, real sponsors. They asked me to talk about digital authenticity and the thin line between inspiration and theft. The morning of my panel, I was nervous. Not scared, just shaky with adrenaline. I wore my favorite oversized blazer and combat boots and reminded myself that I'd earned this. Halfway through my talk, someone raised their hand and asked, What would you say to someone who's trying to rebuild after stealing someone else's content? Like, if they genuinely want to do better? I paused. The easy answer would have been, don't. Or too late. But I took a breath and gave them the truth. I'd say they need to get honest with themselves first. Not with the person they hurt, not with the internet, but with themselves. Because if you don't understand why you crossed that line, you'll cross it again. And if you're only sorry because you got caught, that's not remorse. That's regret. After the talk, people came up to thank me. One girl hugged me and said she'd dropped out of art school after a professor stole her thesis. Another told me she finally reported a coworker who'd been lifting her ideas in pitch meetings. I listened. I nodded. I felt whole. Amanda hasn't resurfaced since that call. As far as I know, she's not creating anymore. Not under her name, at least. Part of me wonders if she ever will again. Part of me hopes she does, but the right way this time. Because here's the thing no one tells you when you finally win. Revenge isn't the reward. Freedom is. The Digital Creators Summit was over. My flight home was quiet, smooth. I watched clouds drift across the window and realized I hadn't thought about Amanda in days. Not once. Not during the panel. Not when I was interviewed by a podcast host about the ethics of content creation. Not even when someone brought up stolen art during the audience Q&A. I had finally stopped letting her live rent-free in my head. That realization hit harder than any form of revenge ever could. I got back to my studio and did something I hadn't done in a while. I painted something just for myself. No hashtags. No planning. No expectation. It was messy, raw, and not even particularly good by my usual standards. But it felt like breathing. Like the version of me who used to draw in the margins of her notebooks was finally getting some space again. A week later, a package showed up at my door. No return address. I was cautious for a second, paranoia from the whole ordeal, but inside was just a plain manila envelope. I opened it and found a printed photo of Amanda and me from when we were maybe 11, arms slung around each other at a summer fair, both with ice cream-stained shirts and huge grins. Taped to the back was a short note. I've been in therapy. I don't expect anything. Just wanted you to have this. I think I took more from you than just your work. Maybe I took time, too. Maybe I took history. I hope this gives a little of it back. Hey, I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just stared at it for a long time. And then, quietly, I tucked it into a drawer. Not out of bitterness. Not to hide it. Just because it was a chapter that didn't need to be rewritten anymore. Over the next few months, life sped up in a way that felt earned. I got an offer from a major art supply brand to collaborate on a new product line, custom sketchbooks designed by independent artists. They gave me full creative control. I named the line Proof of Work. It sold out within 3 weeks. I hired a small team to help with orders and engagement, and finally started turning my little passion into a real business. Not some overnight influencer gimmick, something sustainable, something that could grow. I launched a newsletter and included a weekly spotlight for up-and-coming digital artists, people who'd tagged me or sent in their portfolios with hope in their eyes. I made it a rule. If someone sends you their art, you respond. Even if it's just a word. Even if it's just, keep going. Because I knew what it felt like to have no one in your corner. One afternoon, while doing a live Q&A, someone asked, "Would you ever collaborate with Amanda if she came back with her own brand?" I smiled. Not a petty smile. A real one. No, I said, but I'd support her growth from a distance. Quietly. Not everything needs to be a reunion. The comments lit up with people praising the answer, but I didn't say it for likes. I said it because it was true. Some people aren't meant to return to your life. That doesn't mean you wish them harm. It just means you've learned where your boundaries are, and you've got better things to protect now. Like peace. That summer, I got invited to do a mural at a community art center in Seattle. It was the biggest project I'd ever taken on, 10 feet tall, 20 feet wide. I spent weeks sketching and planning. The final design was a blend of everything I'd been through, layered hands reaching out and overlapping, soft neon lines that mimicked code, fragments of my earliest characters reborn in new, richer forms. When it was done, the center hosted a public unveiling. Families showed up. Kids pointed at the mural like it was magic. A little girl with pink glasses tugged on my sleeve and asked if I'd painted the glowing wolf lady. I told her yes, and she said, "She looks like someone who would protect you." I almost lost it right there. Later, I sat on the curb outside the center, watching the sun dip behind the buildings. My phone buzzed. A text from one of the brand reps I'd worked with the previous year. You've come a long way. The industry needs more people like you. I put the phone down and leaned back, breathing in the summer air. No algorithms, no analytics, just a moment. And in that moment, I realized the full arc of everything I'd gone through. Amanda had tried to take something I loved and use it for clout. She wanted the rewards without the work. She thought the world would never know. But I built something better, not just to prove her wrong, but to prove myself right. That I was good enough. That my voice mattered. That the stories I told through my art had weight, and heart, and truth. I used to think revenge meant winning. Now I know better. Revenge is just the thing that gets you moving. But healing? That's what keeps you going. And growth? Growth is when someone tries to take your identity and you build something so bright, so real, so completely yours that it couldn't be faked even if they tried.